I was just looking, and this talk is a little bit long. I might not make it all the way through. I'll have to find a logical place to have a break, but we'll see how that goes. So this begins a chapter, Seeing Dharma. Paul broke it up into 6 sort of major headings: hearing Dharma, understanding Dharma, practicing Dharma. And this is beginning Seeing Dharma. And then the next chapter is Being Dharma. And the last one is Teaching Dharma. This is titled Kondanna Knows. We are practitioners of Dhamma. All Dhammas are nature, existing as it is. Nature is exclusively and completely Dhamma. Those things are not yet clear to us because we haven't come to know the way to practice, so we need to rely on the instructions and teaching of a qualified teacher. Nature also teaches us. Things such as trees are born from their causes and grow accordingly. This is nature showing us something, but we are not yet able to see that the trees are teaching us. All the way from their birth to growing, blossoming, and giving fruit, we merely see them as supplying fruit for us to eat. We don't see them as something for us to turn inward and reflect upon. We should know that Dhamma is the tree teaching us, but we don't realize that yet. When the tree gives fruit, we gather and eat it indifferently without any real investigation or consideration. The sweet and sour tastes of fruit are their nature. These characteristics are Dhamma, and the fruits are teaching us something, but we don't understand that. When the leaves of the tree wither and die, they fall. We only see it as leaves falling, and we tread on them or sweep them up without any investigation. We don't realize this is Dhamma, teaching something for us to hear. The leaves of the tree fall, then the new buds appear. We see this cycle, but don't really think much about it, so we don't learn anything of significance from it. If we were to turn it inward, we would see that our own birth and death are not so very different from that of trees. This body comes into being as a result of various causes and depends on the 4 elements for its existence. It grows and comes to fruition of different kinds, just like a tree. And the falling leaves and new buds are no different from the lives of people. Take a look at this. We are constantly growing and conditions are constantly changing. Like the trees, just as the trees are, so are we. All humans are born in the beginning, change in the middle, their physical constituents changing into something different from what they were, and pass away in the end. The natural phenomena of trees, vines, and shrubs are continuously and unceasingly in a state of flux. And if we turn this inward, we will understand birth, aging, and death within ourselves, just as we see them externally. When you understand Dhamma from listening to the words of a qualified teacher, it truly pricks your heart. Outer and inner are the same. Sankhara, conditioned phenomena, with or without consciousness occupying them, are the same, not different at all. If we understand this, then seeing the way trees are, we will see the nature of our aggregates of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. With this kind of understanding, we are called people who understand Dhamma. Being people who understand Dhamma, we will strive to see Dhamma everywhere and in all things, to see the characteristics of our 5 khandhas, that they are continually in a state of flux, moving, changing, and transforming without any let-up. Whether we are standing, sitting, walking, or lying down, we employ mindfulness to guard and watch at all times. Seeing external objects, it is the same as seeing internal phenomena. Seeing internal phenomena is the same as seeing external phenomena, because they are of the same nature. When it is like this, we are hearing the teaching of the Buddha. With this understanding, it is said that the Buddha nature, meaning the one who knows, is awakened. There is knowledge of internal and external phenomena, and the ability to explain the facets of Dhamma in various ways according to what we have seen. We are constantly hearing the teachings of the Buddha, whether we are walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. And whenever we are seeing forms, hearing sounds, savoring tastes, and so on. It is exactly as if the Buddha were teaching us, because the Buddha is just this one who knows, dwelling within our hearts. Knowing and seeing and investigating the Dhamma like this, the Buddha is present. It is not that the Buddha entered final Nibbana long ago and cannot teach us now. The Buddha nature, which means our own minds when clear knowledge has arisen, will lead us to investigate and know all Dhammas. This knowing of the Dhamma is the Buddha himself. If we establish Buddha in our hearts, having this awareness and sensitivity, then as we go on investigating, we will see all things as no different from ourselves. Living creatures, plants and animals, poor people and those in difficulty, rich people, dark or light-skinned people, are no different from us, because all of them are of the same characteristics. With this understanding, wherever we stay, we will be content and at ease. The Buddha will be there, constantly instructing and assisting us. Without this understanding, we will always have the desire to hear teachings. We will want to seek out different teachers, one after the next, and will always be asking when we can get still another teaching, all the while not yet understanding Dhamma. The Buddha said that becoming enlightened to the Dhamma is a matter of understanding nature, things as they are. If we don't know nature, when we meet with situations, we are thrown into turmoil and are always in a state of struggle. We are delighted with things and get lost, being fooled by them. We are upset by things and fooled by them. We are deluded in nature, fooled by nature, and are at the mercy of our moods and emotions. Being deluded about nature like this means that we do not understand Dhamma. So the Enlightened One explained about what is natural. This nature is not something mysterious. In nature, things appear, change, and come to an end. It is the same for the material objects created by people. The pots and dishes we use, for example, are also created by causes and conditions, which are the conceptions and intentions of human beings. They are used for a while, they become worn, and finally break and fall apart. That is ordinary for them. Trees, plants, and mountains, as well as animals and humans, are the same. Coming into existence, changing and deteriorating, and in the end, breaking up and disappearing. So when the ascetic Ajahn Kondanna listened to the words of the Buddha as the first disciple, the realization he had was nothing very complicated. He understood that whatever comes into existence will naturally undergo change and finally cease to be. That is the nature of things. Previously, Kondanna had not realized this. He had not considered this fact and seen it clearly. Or perhaps he had thought about it, but had not contemplated it thoroughly. Thus, he had not let go. He had still clung to the 5 aggregates. But when he sat before the Buddha and listened to the teachings for the first time with clear mindfulness, the Buddha nature awakened in him, and he was able to receive authentic transmission on one level of Dhamma, which was that all sankhara are uncertain. All things that are born will undergo transformation and finally cease to be. That is what is ordinary and natural for them. The understanding that arose in Kondanna upon hearing the words of the Buddha was different from anything he had experienced before. He realized the mind as it actually is. So it is said, the Buddha arose within him. Then the Buddha proclaimed that Kondanna had attained the eye of wisdom and seen Dhamma. What did it mean that he had seen the Dhamma? He had attained knowledge and vision that all things arise in the beginning, change in the middle, and pass away in the end. All things means all phenomena of body and mind, and these characteristics apply to all of them without exception. When this understanding clearly penetrated the heart of Ajahn Kondanna at the moment when he sat before the Buddha, it became the cause that enabled him to remove all clinging to sankhara from his mind, the view that holds the body to be one's own and to be one's self, and leads one to believe in a self, was clearly seen and uprooted. Once belief in a self was uprooted, the mind of skeptical doubt also came to an end. There was no more bewilderment about phenomena, his knowledge of things having been transformed. As for superstitious attachments to conventions, rites, and rituals, his practice had become correct and straight, so there was no more doubt or hesitation, no more groping or fumbling about cause and effect. If the body were to become sick or experience any other changes, he would not have any hazy notions about it. The ending of doubt had removed attachment and clinging. If there is still attachment, we will still be groping after the meaning of things that happen to the body, and this groping is superstition. But when belief in and attachment to the body as ourselves or our own is removed, there is no longer uncertainty or superstitious notions. So when the Supreme Teacher expounded Dhamma, Ajahn Kondanna opened the eye of Dhamma. He now saw clearly. His view of things was reversed. When this seeing became clear and focused, his clinging was uprooted. When clinging was done away with, the one who knows had truly arisen. Before there had been knowledge, but he had not been able to remove clinging. This meant that he knew the Dhamma but did not see Dhamma. Or we could say that he saw Dhamma but had not become one with Dhamma, because he did not know the actual condition of things. Thus the Supreme Teacher proclaimed, Kondanna knows. Normally, we are deluded and confused about nature, for example, our bodies. They are composed of earth, water, fire, and air. That is one aspect of nature, material phenomena that can be seen with the eyes. This form of nature is nourished by food, grows and changes, and eventually disappears. Internally, there is the one who is in charge of the body, the consciousness or faculty of knowing. When this knowing occurs through the eye, it is called eye consciousness, or the sense of sight. When it occurs through the ear, it is called the sense of hearing. When it occurs through the nose, it is called the sense of smell, and so on for the tongue, body, and mind. There is one knowing, but we call it different things when it occurs through different senses. 6 types of consciousness are mentioned in the teachings, but it is only a convention to specify when we are knowing at different points of sense contact, through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind. In truth, there are not 6. It is one faculty of knowing that is capable of awareness at these 6 points. And this one mind, this one who knows, has the potential to know things as they really are, which is knowing nature. Whenever this one who knows is still obscured, its knowing is only the knowing of delusion, knowing in wrong ways, having a wrong understanding of things. It is just the same fundamental awareness, nothing other. Knowing and seeing correctly or knowing and seeing wrongly are functions of this one faculty of awareness. Thus, when we talk about wrong view and right view, we are not talking about 2 separate things, 2 separate minds or places of origin. When delusion is present, it hides the truth and obscures the mind, and our awareness is mistaken. When our awareness is wrong, our view is wrong. Following that, actions will be wrong, livelihood will be wrong, all will be wrong, and this all begins with wrong understanding. The factors of the path arise in the same place and follow the same progression. Right view also arises from the one who knows, this faculty of awareness. When it is correct, then the incorrect will vanish. When it is right, that which is wrong will vanish. Thus, when the Buddha was developing the perfections as the Bodhisattva, performing great austerities and living on minute amounts of food to the point where his body became severely emaciated, some insight was born within him. he realized that all the Buddhas of the past were enlightened through the mind, not through the body. The body by itself doesn't know anything. Feeding it or not feeding it is not the point. Others can even kill this body without harming the mind. So after he had this change of outlook, after he attained enlightenment and began to teach, he pointed out that the enlightenment of all the Buddhas was attained through cultivation of mind. When he looked deeply within his own mind, he gave up practicing the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-mortification, and he pointed this out clearly in his first teaching. His first sermon cut directly through the misconceptions and mistaken practices of ordinary beings. Being immersed in the pursuit of pleasure, comfort, and happiness, in the pride that seeks to elevate and extol oneself, is not the path that one who has gone forth from the world should walk. The state of dissatisfaction and suffering, of negativity, aversion, and anger is self-mortification. It brings about no benefit at all. These two paths are not the way a seeker of liberation should walk. They refer to the extremes of elation and depression, indulgence and suppression. The one who walks the path is our own awareness, which should not follow these extreme reactions of mind. The mind should not be left to follow what it supposes to be good or bad, because that becomes the cause of joy or sorrow. If it becomes happy over something, there is then attachment to what is perceived as good, and that is the extreme of indulgence. If there is something that is perceived as being bad, that is grasped with aversion, invested with negative significance. This is the mind following the two extremes, pleasure on one side, pain on the other, which the Buddhists summarized as sensual indulgence and self-mortification. These two paths are not the way of a samana, a tranquil being. They are the ways of worldly people. All worldly beings are constantly in search of happiness and pleasure. They are habituated to the extreme reactions of attraction and aversion to things, and are always being bounced back and forth between the two as they undergo ceaseless change and keep on trading places. This is the way of the world. If there is happiness, there will be suffering. There is suffering, and then there is happiness, and then there is suffering again. These are things that will always be uncertain and unstable. Thus they are the Dhamma of those who are mired in the world, those who are not at peace. Those who are at peace do not go this way, but they do see and know about these things. They see pleasure and happiness, but not accepting them as real. They don't get attached to or stuck in them. They are aware of whatever aversion there may be to things, but they do not take that as a path either. These are people who see the path. Those who are tranquil understand the way that is not tranquil while still remaining at peace. The way of seeking happiness with its resultant depression and elation over things is recognized as a mistaken path. The wise also experience such phenomena, but do not expect to find any ultimate meaning in them, so they let go of such reactions. The ones who are at peace are unshaken by these things, by happiness and suffering. When there is no more meaning seen in things, one naturally lets go of happiness and suffering, in accord with their nature. When happiness and suffering are known for what they become invalid phenomena. They have no meaning in the mind of the awakened being. There is mere recognition of them, that happiness or suffering are appearing, like hot or cold appearing. It is not that there is no recognition or awareness. So it is said that the Arahant is one far from the mental afflictions. Actually, he or she does not go anywhere far away. They don't flee from the afflictions, and the afflictions do not flee from them. It's like a lotus leaf in the water. The lotus leaf exists in the water and lives nourished by the water. The water is in contact with the lotus, but cannot penetrate or submerge it. The afflictions are the water. The mind of the practitioner is the lotus leaf. They contact each other. The lotus doesn't need to avoid the water, but they remain separate. The mind of the yogin is like this. It does not flee or escape to anywhere. When good comes, it is aware. When bad comes, it is aware. When there is happiness or suffering, like or dislike, the mind is aware. It is aware of everything that occurs, but it merely recognizes these states. They cannot penetrate the mind. This means there is no grasping and no attachment to things. In Dhamma language, it is spoken of as equanimity, keeping the mind balanced and neutral. In ordinary speech, we call it recognition, being informed or notified of what is going on. There is no involvement or taking sides. Just as when we meet someone and he tells us about something, we merely take note of what they have to say. We don't necessarily believe anything, we merely take note. This kind of attitude must be maintained continuously because these things exist in this world. The Buddha was enlightened in the world. He taught in the world. He examined the facts of the world. If he had not examined and come to understand the world, when he met with the world, he would not have been able to transcend it. After his enlightenment, the world was still there as before. For example, there was still praise. There was still criticism. There were still material gain, rank, happiness, and suffering. If none of these things existed, there would be no basis for enlightenment, because they are the very opposite of enlightenment. When the Buddha was enlightened, he awakened to the truth of these worldly dhammas that deceive and obscure the minds of human beings. Gain and loss, rank and disrepute, happiness and suffering, praise and blame belong to the world. If the minds of people follow after these things and fall under their sway, that is called worldliness. These 8 dhammas destroy the Eightfold Path. Whenever they increase, the path vanishes. When they occupy and fill the heart, there will be no opportunity for walking the path that makes an end of suffering. There is only the world flooding the heart and keeping it in a state of turmoil, anxiety, and distress. Thus we are taught to develop the path, which is wisdom. The path can be summarized as developing morality to the utmost, developing samadhi to the utmost, and developing wisdom to the utmost. These are the tools and faculties for destroying the fiction that is called the world, the path for destroying the worldliness dwelling in the hearts of deluded beings. Whenever attachment to happiness and suffering, to gain and loss is present in the mind, the world is there. The mind is the world. A worldly being has been born of craving. If craving is extinguished, the world is extinguished, because this blind craving is the source of the world. The Eightfold Path and the 8 worldly dhammas are a pair. These 2 ways exist in the same place. It's not as if they are in separate realms. The attachment to happiness, status, praise, and gain exists in the mind with the one who knows. But when there is attachment, the one who knows is obscured, so its knowledge is mistaken, and it is dwelling in the world. The world comes to be in the mind. The one who knows has not yet awakened the Buddha nature, so it cannot remove itself from worldliness. When we train the body, speech, and mind in morality, meditation, and wisdom, we soon come to see the worldly dhammas buried in the heart. We will see ourselves clinging to them and how that clinging comes about. If we train and make the mind able, we will thus see the world and its origins. The Buddha said, "O bhikkhus, look upon this world as an ornamented and bejeweled royal chariot, by which fools are dazzled and entranced, but which is meaningless to the wise." To see the world, we don't have to go traveling all over Thailand and other countries. We need only look at this mind immersed in worldliness. Then, sitting under a tree, we can see the world. When we determine to practice and develop the path, we try to practice samadhi, to focus and pacify the mind. But the mind does not become focused and peaceful so easily. We don't want it to think, but it keeps on thinking. Really, The mind of an ordinary person is like someone sitting on a nest of red ants. Sitting so close to them, they're going to bite. When we who have the worldly dhammas filling our hearts start to practice with our worldly minds, the habits of attraction and aversion, elation and depression, distraction and worry, all immediately start to surface. This is quite a natural occurrence for those who have not yet attained the Dhamma and whose minds are filled with worldliness. We have not yet seen through these habits and are thus not able to resist their power. So it's just like sitting on an anthill. We are sitting right on their home, so of course they will come up and bite us. When they are biting, what should we do? We have to find some way to destroy them. Put on poison, cover them with earth, or set fire to the nest, so they will flee. This is what practice entails, making an effort to combat what torments us. But practitioners don't generally think like this. Whenever they are feeling good about something, they'll go along with it. If something makes them unhappy, they are affected by that. When they meet with praise and blame and the rest, they react according to habit and pursue them, never quelling them. When that happens, there is the world. People who study a little bit will look at this and say they just can't do it. It's too hard to let go of these things. That only means they're afraid to exert the effort. When the mental afflictions occur, the 8 worldly dhammas suppress and obscure the Eightfold Path. People can't endure things, so they cannot maintain morality, and they can't persevere in meditating to calm the mind. They can't control themselves and endure in order to contemplate the workings of the mind. It's just like the guy sitting on the anthill. He's out of his mind with pain and discomfort from the bites, so there is nothing he's able to focus on or accomplish. Unable to remove the source of his misery, he just remains there, trying to endure somehow. This is how it is. The worldly dhammas and the Buddha's path of practice are always going to be antagonistic to each other. When ordinary people try to train the mind and make it tranquil, things that have been residing there will come gushing out. If delusion is allowed to remain in control, the mind is in darkness. But when knowledge is born through perseverance, delusion dissipates and the mind is illumined. Knowledge and delusion occur in the same place. When knowledge is born, delusion cannot stay. When worldliness rules and we cannot find the Eightfold Path, we have to make efforts to practice tranquility and insight meditation. It's necessary to keep at it until we can see the attachment, aversion, and confusion that come from contact with the 8 worldly dhammas starting to decrease. When they become lighter, we are able to recognize them more clearly and start to remove ourselves from the world, which resides within us as these things and our grasping reactions to them. One who practices should bear witness as to how much progress is being made on this path. There are only 2 choices, right view and wrong view, and everything follows from them. The practitioner becomes like 2 people, meaning the way of the world and the way of Dhamma struggle within the mind. The development of the path will gradually and steadily harass and deal with the worldly Dhammas, until in the end the wisdom of right view arises and wrong understanding vanishes. The final result is that the path destroys the afflictions. The 2 ways continuously contend with each other throughout our efforts to practice, and this can continue even when we think we are gaining insight through vipassana meditation. It can easily turn into vipassanupakilesa, the defilement of insight. What does this mean? When we develop the path, we make efforts to practice virtue and purify the mind. But whatever good results we get, we can become elated over them and attached to them. This elation is just another form of grasping and becomes vipassanupakilesa, the wisdom of the mental afflictions. Some people will develop a little goodness and then become attached to that goodness. When they attain some sort of purity, they become attached to purity. When they attain knowledge, they become attached to knowledge. This clinging to knowledge and purity is vipassana, infecting the practice. So when practicing vipassana and gaining some insight, beware of vipassana, because they can be very similar and you can be misled, unaware of what is taking place. The vital point is that when vipassana occurs, there will eventually be some suffering as its fruit. If it is truly vipassana, there is no suffering. It is genuinely peaceful, purified of happiness and suffering. Practice really has to depend on steadfastness and patient endurance. Some people start to practice meditation and they have ideas and desires as to how they want it to be. They expect the mind to be calm right away, but the old seeds of habits of turmoil are there, so the practitioners will have to experience their ripening. It's important to make efforts where this distress appears. We might feel we would be fine without such disciplines that cause us to feel bothered and oppressed. We could eat and sleep in comfort and at will. We could talk about whatever we like when we have the urge. We could go here and there as we wish, and following our impulses like this would bring well-being. The teaching of the Buddha talks about resisting, grating against things. The way of transcendence grates against the worldly. Right view grates against wrong view. Purity grates against impurity. These things are always going to be incompatible. In the scriptures, there's a fable to illustrate this. Before the Buddha attained enlightenment, when he had accepted and eaten rice porridge from the milkmaid Sujata, he set the dish on the surface of a southerly flowing river and made the aspiration, "If I am going to become a supremely awakened Buddha, may this dish flow north." And the dish flowed to the north. The dish symbolized his right view, the inherent Buddhahood of the mind's basic awareness that does not follow the inclinations of ordinary beings. At that moment, it was able to go against the current of all worldliness in his heart and not be influenced by anything. So now we have his teachings, which go against the flow of our habits. We have impulses of desire and attraction, but he tells us not to crave. We have the impulse to be angry and displeased over things, but he tells us not to be averse. We tend to be deluded about things, and he shows us how to destroy delusion. The teaching is always aimed at uprooting these habits. The Buddha's mind was going entirely against the currents of the world. The things that are normally said to be attractive and beautiful, he did not see as attractive and beautiful. The world said that the body belongs to oneself, but he did not see it as his own. The things that are said to be meaningful and valuable, he did not see as meaningful and valuable. His view was beyond the way of worldly beings, which merely clings to phenomena. This state of awareness arose in him. Following that, there is the legend of his receiving 8 handfuls of grass from a Brahmin. He made a seat from it and vowed to attain enlightenment there. If the inner meaning of this is explained, the 8 handfuls of grass are the 8 worldly Dhammas. His efforts were to destroy them. This is what a practitioner must do. Destroy attachment to gain, status, praise, pleasure, and their opposites. The grass was offered to him, and he vowed to sit on it and enter meditative absorption. Sitting on it is a metaphor for suppressing the worldly Dhammas. His mind was above them, bent on attaining the transcendent Dhamma. The transcendent is that which renders the worldly meaningless, like refuse. To him, gain and the rest were just refuse. He could sit on them, but they did not affect or obstruct him at all. Okay, maybe I'll leave it there for today. Okay, any questions, comments? Vipassanupakiles is it's things like the first is like radiance, joy, unremitting mindfulness, steady effort. It's all the sort of things that you you hope for in your practice. But it's because of its positive nature, it is a source of attachment and clinging, and assuming a kind of taking a kind of a stance of attachment towards it. So getting clinging to those positive states of mind, and then like vipassana knowledges, vipassana jnanas are things like knowledge of contemplation of rise and fall, contemplation of dissolution, contemplation of knowledge as the appearance of fear or terror, knowledge of the contemplation of disadvantages of things, contemplation of dispassion, knowledge of the desire for deliverance. So it's this equanimity regarding all formations, and so it's quite has a different flavor, and sort of much more the flavor of equanimity and seeing things in their true nature. So anyway, that's it's a play on words in the Thai language, and Luang Por loved his wordplay. But also just sort of seeing there's a danger in, even when your practice is going, quote unquote, good, you still need to be contemplating it in terms of its arising, its ceasing, and its limitation. There was something else that, as I was reading it, it's hard to translate, but it's when, say, like this, and Luang Por says like Buddha nature, and it's not sort of, because Buddha nature is kind of, especially it's a very specific Mahayana term that has, and I'm not quite sure exactly how it's used, but when he's speaking of a Buddha nature is sort of what the way that Ajahn Chah expressed it in Thai was Buddha power, sort of like the Buddha power. The nature of a Buddha, or the fundamental nature of a Buddha, and pointing to, as I said that the Buddha, meaning the one who knows, is awakened. So that just that fundamental quality of awakeness, of knowing, is the fundamental nature of a Buddha, and that's what we're to be turning our attention toward. Yeah, Jack.
Luang Por, you were reading about the 8 worldly winds, and for me, I get happy with gain and sad with loss so quickly that it just happens. Well, I don't want to say it just happens, but it gets so quickly that I'm not aware of me grasping onto it. And when that's happening, when I'm happy because of gain or sad because of loss, would you suggest doing some contemplation to move towards equanimity, or maybe even just to stay with and investigate that?
Well, a lot of it is just staying with it, investigating is the contemplation, really, and recognizing the okay. Oh, look at that! Here I am. I got what I wanted. Or I didn't get what I wanted, and that doesn't feel so good. And that whether it's material or emotional, it's they're of the same nature. So it's just really taking note and recognizing and seeing that deep-rooted habit and tendency, and can I create some space around this? Can I be present with quality of knowing this clearly. And what does that feel like? Because then there's a certain kind of satisfaction and contentment in being able to witness loss and disappointment or pleasure at some kind of something going one's way, but without getting caught up in it. Because as Ajahn Chah was saying, these are natural responses, but we get swept up by them. We get attached to it. And the problem is in the clinging. It's not the problem that there's, that there is hot and cold. The problem is that we, in whatever situation it is, we want it. We want it. We enjoy it being like that, or take delight in it, or we're upset because it's such a way. But they're just sort of part of nature.
Just that one bit reminded me of a quote that I always really enjoy. It's from Oscar Wilde, and he says, "There's only one thing worse than not getting what you want. It's getting what you want," because of the inevitable change, and disappointment when it's over.
Well, thank you. I was surprised that he said that Rupa and Nama are the same, and I was wondering, it sounded like he meant because they share the characteristics of anicca, anatta.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're the same because they share the characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. So that's their sameness. They sort of merge in that sameness.
I was wondering also if they arise together, and so that you can't actually know seeing or hearing without nama, so that in our actual experience there's never one or the other, that's always like nama knowing rupa.
Yes, right. And so you can drive yourself batty trying too hard to make things absolutely discrete and separate, whereas they arise together. They arise dependent on each other, and so. But it's the paying attention to their characteristic of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self, that helps one to have a sense of ease and equanimity with it.
And how is that disenchantment come about? What is it that leads someone to realize that grasping after happiness in pleasure is a losing game kind of?
Yeah, well, it just gets tiring. After a while, you just see it over and over and over again, and you see this is a zero-sum kind of effort. I'm really not gaining anything by this.